our visibly fitness isn't just external, right? It's not
That's
just
right.
in what we put in our body and what we do with our body, but it's what we allow our mind and our hearts to also participate. You don't have to have it all together. I know the world says you're superwoman and you could do anything and you got this and you're enough. But the reality of the gospel message is that you're not enough and that on your own, you were never meant to be able to do it. But God can.
Right.
God can show you his plan, his purpose for his life, and he can show you himself. Like we all need a good father that we can lean into, and he has that
That's so
available
good.
to us. We have to embrace the slow growth, and oftentimes it's very slow. Until we acknowledge what's going on, we can't ever move forward.
You're listening to the Visibly Fit podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Wendie Pett, and every week I'll give you holistic, practical solutions for everyday issues related to nutrition, healing, functional fitness, and behavior modifications. As a natural path fitness expert and wellness coach for over 20 years, my goal is to empower you to reach for greater health and to rise up to your next level of living in mind, body, and spirit. You were created with greatness in mind. It's time to own it. Are you with me? Then let's dive in. Do you ever feel like you're striving and you think, I can't keep doing this? Well, you're probably right. But guess what? God can. And we're going to be talking about that. That's right. But God can. The author of the book, But God Can, is Becky Kiser. And we are going to be talking with her today on the Visibly Fit podcast. So I'm your host, Wendie Pett. I'm delighted to be here with you today. And I know you're going to enjoy this show. Now, her book is called How to Stop Striving and Live Purposefully and Abundantly. Becky Kiser is a certified life coach, and she is committed to helping women know, love, and follow God and his word so that they can live freer and fuller lives. And she teaches at Christian women's events and prisons and authors books and Bible studies. And she's married and has 3 little girls, lives in the Woodlands area near Houston. And she is just precious. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Well, welcome to Visibly Fit, Becky Kiser. So awesome to have you.
I'm so excited to get to talk with you, Wendy. It's going to be fun.
This is going to be great. And, I don't have a lot of life coaches on the show, but I know there is a great importance to have a coach, have a mentor, have someone that's holding your hand and dragging you along, if you will, or pulling you, depending on where you're at in the stage and of your journey. But you got to have someone that can take you along the way. But I love the name of your book, But God Can, How to Stop Striving and Live Purposely and Abundantly. Mm-hmm. Let's talk, first of all, about that, because I have a feeling you have a story about how not to strive.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm honored to be one of the few who aren't like in the medical field on this, but I love that it says so much that you don't just, with your podcast being Visibly Fit, like our visibly fitness isn't just external, right? It's not just in what we put in our body and what we do with our body, but it's what we allow our mind and our hearts to also participate. And so I love that you are incorporating all these things because we need it all. Like as women, as men, we need to focus on that holistic approach that is mind, body, and spirit. So thank you for including me here. Okay. So your question, what was your question? Sorry, I got derailed. Bye.
The question was, with the title of your book, I have a feeling you might have a striving story that led you to write this book.
Yeah. And for me, it's not so much striving. Like I think there's those who strive for perfectionists. Like I have a kid who's like, and my husband would fully identify this way as well, like high achiever, perfectionist, people pleaser. Like that will be the bent of that striving. And I think a lot of people are in that camp. For me, the striving came when I became a Christian at 16. My past and my story was not in alignment with anything that would be Christ or Christ-centered. And for a long time, it came from a place of feeling like I needed to catch up, right? Like I was behind or I needed to get my act together. And this constant striving to be who I thought God wanted me to be or be portray myself, not even portray myself, but actually be who I think others expected me to be as now a Christian woman. And so there was this constant striving of get it together, pull it together. As Christians who, like, in our church cultures, we often put this pressure on ourselves to, like, I'm fine, praise Jesus. Like, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine. And we
And put
put up
on
our,
that smile. Yeah.
yes, like
Yeah.
we're blessed. We're blessed. But inside we are feeling insecure. We're feeling lonely. We feel betrayed. We feel like we're juggling these health crises. We have all these other things, but we're feeling this pressure on the outside to strive or portray like everything's okay, because that's what good Christians do.
Mm.
And what I wanted to do is put a book out for women and for men, if you are brave enough to pick up a hot pink book. Put a book out for women who, in the midst of all the things of all of our striving, whether it's striving through hard relationships or striving through a diagnosis or striving through financial insecurity or striving through, as we've all walked through with a pandemic, like we're all striving through things in various levels at varying times. So how can that measure up? God's truth measure up to show us that, listen, you don't have to have it all together. I know the world says you're superwoman and you could do anything and you got this and you're enough. But the reality of the gospel message is that you're not enough, and that on your own, you were never meant to be able to do it. But God can.
Right.
But God can heal your marriages. But God can change your friendships. But God can maybe not give you the money you're wanting in your bank account, but he can show you how to be content and grateful with where you're at now. But God can fill in the blank with wherever you're at. And
Heal your
so,
body.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
absolutely.
love that. And the reality is you're right. Everybody is striving in some area or another.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we as Christian women or men portray that everything's just hunky dory and wonderful, and it's like, it's a lie. We're
Yeah,
walking around with a mask on. And
yeah.
so, um, I think it's important to be authentic and real, but let
Mm-hmm.
me kind of flip this on the other side, because
Yeah.
I think sometimes people can get a little too authentic and real all the time and get stuck in their victim
Mm-hmm.
story or that same loop of what they're dealing with, as
Yeah,
opposed to the breakthrough on the other side of it. Can you talk
yeah.
on that a bit?
That's really good. I've not had anybody ask me about that yet or talk about that. And it's so true, especially in Christian circles, right? Where we can sometimes glorify our pain. Like it seems like it's a majority of two camps. Like you're either in a total denial, ignorance, fake it till you make it mentality that you're in,
Right.
or it's on the other side where you're so self-consumed by your own hardships that you've almost made an idol of it in its own right. And so I
Right.
love that you're pointing that out, that sometimes we can over glorify our quote unquote testimony, as
Yeah.
opposed to saying, okay, you don't need to fake it till you make it. You don't need to push it down and pretend like there's not pain or hurt or hardness happening in your life, but you also can't just stay stuck in wallowing. That there is both a space to acknowledge, as I'm sure you've had many psychologists and things like that on the show, like there's a space to acknowledge your pain and grief and heart, like the hard things you've walked through physically, emotionally, spiritually. And then we move forward in faith in those spaces, trusting that God can do something with them. But when we stay stuck, just looking at what is hard or impossible or any of that, we go nowhere. It's
Right.
kind of like I think about the Israelites. I've been reading through the Old Testament with some friends, and it's like how the Israelites, once they crossed through the Red Sea, even before they crossed the Red Sea, they looked at Moses. They're like, why? Like, why did you bring us here? It would have been better to go back to slavery, right? And then
Yeah.
once they got to the promised land, they're like, why did you bring us here? We'll never taste meat again. And why did you bring us here? We're so thirsty. Like, it's this constant, like, not willing to see what's in front of us because we're wallowing so much in the pain, as opposed to God being like, the promised land that I have for you is literally 2 miles away.
Right.
Like
Right.
if you would just start walking, you might experience it, but you're so stuck in the looking back and wishing for a better way that you don't get to experience what could be.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's so good. And that keeps people from experiencing what God can,
Yes.
what
Yeah.
God can do. It just, it, I guess, that's the word I'm going to use,
Mhm.
severs that intimate space of allowing that blessing to occur, or you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It
Mhm.
just kind
Totally.
of puts a block is the word.
Yeah.
And so we are the cause of so much just
Yeah.
because of our stinking thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
But I will say that, the other side of it, right? Like that putting on a mask and acting like everything's okay is not okay either.
Mhm.
So, what would you say to somebody who is, because you really have a desire to get women to really, really know the Lord and to know God's word. And what would you say to somebody that's like, yeah, you know what? I've been in some Bible studies and I've read God's word, but I'm just still not, I don't know. I'm still not really getting it, or I don't
Mhm.
feel comfortable, or what would you say to them? Because I know for me, it took a while. You don't just go to a
Mhm.
one and done Bible study and
Mhm.
think, okay, I got it now. It's like a
Mhm.
journey that we continue to go on, and it's a fresh word each and every day. But what would you
Yeah.
say to that person that might be just kind of in a weird place and needs to get more intimate with the Lord?
Yeah. Well, two things. One, I would say walk before you crawl. And the second thing I would say, or crawl before you
I
walk,
was going to say,
apologies.
wow, that's impressive. But yeah,
Crawl before you
some
walk. You're
some
like, oh,
kids
this is
do.
a different twist. And the other thing I would say, and we could elaborate more on both, the other thing I would say is we all go through hard times, like in any relationship that we have. So the crawl before you walk, don't walk before you crawl. We try to do that, right? Like we try to walk before we crawl. We want to like be sprinting in the Olympics before we've even set up all the way, right? And one of my best friends just adopted a baby, and it's been so visually good for me to be reminded of, okay, he finally started sitting up, and I was so excited. And then he started getting on all fours and just rocking. And then now he's like all over the house crawling. And then just this week he started pulling up. Each of those are developmentally appropriate steps.
Mm-hmm.
If at 4 months or 5 months when he started sitting up, we just propped him up on his feet and he took off, that would be like wild and kind of crazy cool to see and weird. But it wouldn't make sense to any of us, right? Because we know that developmentally, kids who skip crawling, there's issues with that later in life. And so there's a reason in the process at every step of the way. It also helps you as parents, like, get to baby proof the house before they can run. So I would say that, like, we have to embrace the slow growth, and oftentimes it's very slow. And the other thing I would say, and this more is addressing those of us who maybe started off like really strong with God, and whether it was 3 days later or 3 years later or 30 years later, we find ourselves in a rut. And I think that's where we have to give ourselves some grace on that, not let ourselves off the hook, but some grace in the aspect of, there are times in my marriage with Chris, we've been married 17 years now, that I am like, oh my goodness, I can't believe like we get to do this, like that he's my person. And there are other times where I'm like, I'm not sure this is going to work, like that,
Yeah.
or I don't like him, or I don't want to be around him. And other times I'm like, can you, like today, like, can you just work from home because I'm really busy, like couple days, and I just want to be able to see you in the breaks, like there are different seasons and different times. And it's the same with our relationship with God, that there are times where it's like, I don't like you very much. Or there are times where it's like, man, I'm reading through Leviticus and I have no clue what you're talking about. Like, I just
Right.
can't understand this.
Right.
Or just times where you feel distant from him, even though you're quote unquote doing all you should do. That it's
Mm-hmm.
like any other relationship, but we can't quit when it's hard. We can't just
That's good.
stop just because we don't have all the fluffy moments. You're going to miss out on the best parts ever if you do.
That's such a good word, Becky, because I think that so often people always want or think that it's always going to be this warm and fuzzy kind of
Yeah.
time with the Lord, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's really quiet. Like,
Yeah, or
God, are you
often, I
even
would even
like
say
here?
oftentimes, at least for me, I would
Oftentimes,
say
right?
the majority of the time, it's not like, oh my goodness, God, like I'm so
You had
obsessed
this
with you. You're so
revelation.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's oftentimes it's just the mundane, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just faithful in the moments and seeing his faithfulness in the moments, or wondering where his faithfulness is in the moment. And that's real. And when we
Yeah.
put other expectations on ourselves and on God, that's where disappointment comes into the place, where
That's so
we
good.
think it should be a different way, and that's where we're stuck.
That is so good, Becky. And I also think that people probably compare their spiritual walk and journey with other people
Yeah.
that they see. And yet, how do we know their heart? We don't know their
Yeah.
heart. We just see, something on social media and assume they're in this certain trajectory with the
Yeah.
Lord. But, I think there's that too, right? There's that comparison issue.
Totally. Comparison, it is my biggest enemy. I know we all have our different things, and I know it's a pretty common one for women, but it's not every woman deals with it. But I know comparison for me is where I can get trapped the most, because you think you see how others are living. You think you see how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and you only see one side. And it's not even that like the grass is greener on the other side, or it's all a facade. It is appropriately displayed to us. And I mean, in social media, that's not the place you go to and say, it shouldn't be, as we went back to our extremes that we talked about earlier, it shouldn't be the place you go to that where you say, I've been fighting with my husband a whole lot right now, and I don't know. I don't know about it. Or you walk out of an appointment with your doctor and you're like, I just got diagnosed with cancer and I don't know what treatment I'm going to do. Or you get on social media and you do a live and say, man, my kids are real brats and I don't know how to handle their behavior. Like, that's not appropriate. That's not the appropriate space to process that. And
Thank you for saying that, because
yeah,
so often people are using that space for
they
that.
do because it's funny or they feel seen or whatever. Who
Yeah.
knows? That's just
Yeah. They hear
immaturity.
the validation
Yeah, and
of the,
so we have to know that what we see isn't the full picture.
I want to mention, I was just talking to someone the other day who is blind, by the way,
Hmm.
and she said to me that her biggest issue is comparison. And I thought, how on earth are you comparing? She's like, I know I can't see them, but I hear about it and I picture it in my mind. So even if
Mm-hmm.
you can't see it,
Mm-hmm.
that's the power
Yeah,
of that comparison has.
totally.
And it will just rob us of being here and present and doing what we're called to do. So
Yeah.
I love that you're on a mission to help women just overcome this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really stop the striving disaster that it
Mm-hmm.
is, and to really get raw and authentic with yourself, but also
Yeah.
with the Lord, and take action and stay in His Word.
Yeah. Can I
So
ask you a question real quick to
yeah,
follow up to that?
yeah.
With you having such a focus on Visibly Fit, how, even just in what people might first think in hearing that title, how have you seen people struggle with comparison when it comes to the people that typically listen to what you have to put out there? How do you see this, and what do you feel like is your biggest encouragement you offer them consistently?
That's so good. You're flipping this. This is the first
Hey.
time ever. You're flipping the podcast. You're interviewing me. I love it. First of all, Visibly Fit is all about being fit, mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And I make
Yeah.
that very clear,
Yeah.
because you cannot be fit physically on the outside and be a whole person. It's
Mm-hmm.
all of it. And so I think that people do still compare. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things. But when we attack the root cause or the root reason of why that's happening, then it helps us to unravel the lies, untangle the just the noise in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
and rewire their mind in a way that's God honoring, and
Yeah.
it's about who we are in Christ, and not
Yeah.
who we aren't, or who someone
Mm-hmm.
else is. And so it helps to get us in alignment with our Creator, as opposed to the fleshly way in which
Yeah.
we compare. So,
That's
but that's a
good.
good question. Thanks,
That's good.
Becky.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're so cute. Well, cool. Well, tell me a little bit about your coaching. I know you coach women, and so are you coaching them to get on a closer path with the Lord, or how are you coaching them mainly?
Most of the coaching that I do is more self development. So it's not like discipleship bent, although it often becomes a little bit of that. It's
Yeah.
more women who feel stuck, right? Who, I think we all feel a bit like we're stuck on that hamster wheel, like I'm going and going and going, but when I look back, I feel like I've not really accomplished anything, or my list got longer, or I'm busy and I'm doing so many things, but I still feel without purpose. I still feel like I'm missing something. That's my people. Like, I feel like those are who I connect with, because we are stuck in a lie believing that our life is busy or overwhelming, or as people get older, also feeling like it's so quiet. Like my life is so quiet. And
Mm-hmm.
helping women find what is their superpowers, like what has God uniquely gifted them to, or what has he uniquely called them to, even if their giftings don't maybe seemingly align to that, and how can they take some steps forward. So in the same way, if you like a physical trainer, do you need a physical trainer? No. Like, you could work out on your own, you can work out at home, you could go to a gym, you can go for a walk. Like, there's 1,000 physical activities you can do. But, and I'm sure you could validate this a bit more, but there's like scientific research for those who do group workouts. They stick with it longer, they have better results, they feel better, they enjoy working out more. And people who get a personal trainer who they meet with 1 to 3 times a week, they have significant strides of results because
That
they have somebody.
accountability.
Yes. And so it's the
Mm-hmm.
same way with coaching. You don't have to have it. You don't need it for sure. You can just like do it with your friends, right? Or yourself if you want to try. Um, but it is
But
having
you
some,
value it more when you invest in a
when you
coach.
invest
I
in
mean,
it, but
that's what
also
I
when you
know.
have someone who's giving you customized attention to
Yep.
help you and who can see. It's just like anytime we're with friends, like they can see in us what we're unable to see in ourselves.
Right. We're too
And
close to the situation.
yeah, we
Yeah.
know too much. We know too
Yeah.
much. We know too much.
That's good. That's good. So you wrote a book a while ago, and it was about sacred holidays. And I
Mhm.
know we're talking about "But God Can," but I want to mention this. It's sacred holidays, less chaos, more Jesus. And so I think about that. I know that this live time it airs the end of May, but we're always around holidays. Like we
Totally.
just finished Easter. This is when we're
Yeah.
recording this right now. And so I think about the chaos that tends to transpire. And then we miss the present reality of what the holiday is all about. And we miss
Mhm.
actually celebrating it to the capacity that I think
Mhm.
that we deserve and our creator deserves. So can you talk a little bit about that, how to kind of get out of the chaos?
Yeah. Yeah. So that book, it's more of like a resource book that you can pick up before and during each holiday. So every holiday
Mm,
has its own chapter, Christmas, Easter, but all the other ones too, Thanksgiving, summer. Um, there's 10 chapters, 10 holidays. All of them are covered with ideas on what to do, some cultural context or historical context, as well as some nice charge and acknowledgments. But the chaos, the point of that book was we all get caught up in it, right? Like we all get
mhm.
caught up in, we just, as we're recording this, just had Easter, and most people get caught up. They spend more time paying attention to the meal and the outfits and the like
Right.
everybody pulled together and our egg hunts and all the things. And those aren't
The
bad things.
perfect family photo to put on
Yes,
social
yes,
media.
yeah. And that's normal, right? Or is like we're in the midst of going into summer as this is launching of there's all this chaos of okay, for those who have kids, like your kids are home, or now you maybe don't have kids and your house is quiet, so quiet for the first time ever. And there's always chaos surrounding us. So finding a calm in the storm, just like when the waves were riding for Jesus and he starts walking on the water and then things just kind of calm and settle. That's Jesus. Like you can be in the midst of whatever it is that we've talked about already with a broken relationship or finances or diagnosis or just feeling inadequate. And Jesus brings that calm to our chaos. And sometimes I shouldn't say calm because I don't, I don't actually believe he brings calm. He brings himself to the chaos, right? That even in the midst of it, like
Right.
I'm thinking of
Like
that
you've
time
got
where,
3 daughters, you've got 3
right,
little
I
girls.
have a
So
lot of chaos in my house all the time. But he brings himself, his presence, that even that the story of when they were on the boat and Jesus was asleep in the boat and they're like, why are you sleeping? And he's like, you're with me. Like it's enough. And he doesn't always calm the storm for us. He doesn't always still it. Isaiah 43 talks about when you go through the waters, when you go through the fires, it's not an if, but a when.
Mm.
And so how do we still in the midst of those things still find the presence and the knowing, be known by and knowing God?
That's so good. That's so good. And not being addicted to the chaos, but be
Yeah.
addicted to Jesus, or
Yeah.
not be addicted to the striving in your new book, But God
Mhm.
Can, but be addicted to Jesus and knowing
Yes.
that God can.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
can you tell us maybe a story or two of maybe someone that you've helped and guided along their journey?
Um,
But you don't have to say names. Yeah.
yeah. That's why I'm thinking on the spot of trying to be as vague as possible. I'm thinking of one woman that I met with for over a year, and she wasn't a Christian, and she on paper had it all, right? Like she was beautiful. And when we talk about visibly fit, she was the most visibly fit person I'd ever been around. She had a beautiful family with all the like perfectly poised pictures, and she wasn't faking it, but she was just living life how she thought she should, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she sat across from me the very first time we met. I can still see her and just tears streaming down her face. And she was like, I just feel stuck. Like, I don't know the point of all this. And it was the first time she felt safe enough to admit that, because everywhere else she had to hold it together. Everywhere else she had to be on. And one of the things we worked on for months was one, just seeing herself differently, because it starts there, just like you've talked about already, that you do so often, of just the outside can't change until the inside changes, right? That's not true, actually. Like the outside can change.
I mean, I knew what you mean, though.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. But let's be clear for anyone who doesn't get it. Like,
but it's not going to stay changed.
You're not going to be happy with it. Right. Like I've had friends who have 12 packs and yet they're very sad, and they're working out. They'll work out for 4 hours a day, and yet they feel pointless because their striving becomes physical.
Right.
So instead
of like financial striving, and they're still not, any of it. And
any of it that we try to do on our own, we're going to fall short. And so I love that you always like push this holistic approach, mind, body, spirit. All of it needs to be in alignment, and all of it will get out of alignment. But that's where we have the grace to go back of, okay, I messed that up, but God, you can make this right. You can heal this. You can correct me. And that's what I saw in her life and so many other women's lives of, it doesn't matter where you've been or how stuck you are or how perfect your life seems. God can show you his plan, his purpose for his life, and he can show you himself. Like we all need a good father that we can lean into, and he has that available to us.
That's so good. And this woman that you're speaking of, did she come to know the Lord?
She, I don't know, because we've not talked in a few years now, but it was one of those relationships where I was able to like take her through scripture and lead her to scripture. And she was definitely open to a lot of things after that. Yeah. And I don't know. That was where a lot of times
planting. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of times that's our story, right? We want to see the full outcome. We want to be like, and the story and the outcome is she got saved and her household got saved. And then her whole neighborhood
and she was free. Club. She felt free.
Yes. That's like the but God can moments. Like that's the outcome we want.
Right.
And sometimes the outcome is simply like, I had a lot of really faithful, good, honest, vulnerable conversations with her. And that's it. That's the only part of it I'll know. And,
well, I'll say, thanks for sharing that story. And I'll say that there's a lot of women and men, but since, I work mainly with women, I don't know about you, but I think you do with your hot pink book. But, a lot of women in the church are struggling in that same capacity, even as that woman that was an unbeliever was struggling. Right. Really? And they're seeking that freedom, that escape, that freedom. And there's so many different ways in which they're self-sabotaging or reaching for that freedom. And the only one that can fill that void is the Lord.
Yeah.
So I guess, my heart is the church, just like yours is, right? And so with women that might be silently suffering, maybe someone listening right now that's just really silently suffering, what would you say would be like their first next step that they could do like right now to take action to feel better and to know that they're loved?
Yeah. First, I would just say, I'm so sorry. And I'm so glad that you're here, and that even though you feel alone and silent and isolated and whatever it is you're walking through, you're welcome here with us right now. And so I'm sorry for what you have had to go through that makes you feel like you're suffering and that you have to be silenced in that suffering. So first, want to acknowledge that. The second thing I would say to anyone who's in that space is you have to acknowledge it to yourself before you acknowledge it anywhere else. And so
Good word.
I can be real good at like disassociating from whatever is my pain because I'm a give me the next step. Let's goal set. Let's plan. Like I am a
Kind of
master at that.
compartmentalize or
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you need a brainstorm buddy, I'm your girl. Like I'm all about, I can give you the next step. And what I'm personally learning these past few years, especially in counseling, I've been learning like, okay, I need to acknowledge what is. And when I just move forward too quickly, I miss out on the parts God wants me to do. And so that's actually part of the beginning part of the book. We talk about how to think differently. We talk about what our lies are. We talk about what's holding us back because until we acknowledge what's going on, we can't ever move forward.
Yeah.
And then you said, like, what's the actual next step? Well, I mean, I could brainstorm next steps all day, but what I would say is take the one you're thinking right now. Like whatever may be that thing that you're like, I don't know, is it? Could it be? I'm not sure. Yes, go for it. I don't believe in anything I've read in scripture that our good and loving Father would be like, would smite us because we took a step of faith in the wrong direction. It's just
Good.
not in his character, right? Like if
Right.
he can love those who have killed people and have done horrible things, then I think if you take a step of faith in the wrong direction, he's going to tenderly lead you back. And the same way with my kids, when they yell or snap or whatever, I'm not like, and I'm done with you. Like, this is over.
Can you imagine? Oh my
Right? Like, I
gosh.
don't kick them out of the house because they
Right.
yelled at their sister or me. We have a talk about it for sure. We readjust. Sometimes I just ignore. Like, you do what is appropriate in the moment. But at the end of the day, like I love my kids and they could honestly kill another person and I would still love them. That's how much I care about them. And if I like, I think it's Matthew 7, where it talks about like, if we earthly parents know how to give our kids good things, how much more does the Father in heaven? And so while it seems like the things God's handed to us isn't good, that's where it gets tricky, right? Like but this doesn't feel good. This doesn't seem good. And it may certainly not be good. Even so, we can trust that the Father wants goodness for us, that he wants himself for us. And so we can step towards that and then trust his loving, good correction to lead us to the spaces and places we should be.
That's so good. So good, Becky. Yeah, thank you. Kind of put you on the spot with that one. And that
Good.
was very well said. Yeah. So if you are listening and you want to take that next step, take it. Just take it. Be bold, be courageous, and take it. And trust that the Lord is good. And if that next step is to go and get Becky's book, take it. Go to BeckyKiser.com, and that link will be in the show notes, so you can get it there. But definitely check out her book. And then if coaching is your next step with her, take it. If coaching with me is your next step, take it. Like whatever it is, be brave and go for it. It's not a wrong move. So awesome. Becky, I have so enjoyed having you. Is there like, I don't know. I mean, I'm just getting to know you, but I love you already. And we have some mutual friends.
Yes.
But this is just kind of a fun question. And again, I don't know you that well, but do you have any kind of fun, like odd thing that you like to do, like a talent, a gift that like people would be like, oh, wow. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like you play a weird instrument or I don't know.
Is this like a question you always ask or you're just throwing it out? Like,
I'm kind of throwing it out there.
Okay. An odd talent. Okay. It's one of the things I don't have any talents. And that's one of the things I've always been like really insecure about is like everyone seems to
I
have
always
like,
say that too, but you probably do. You're just not aware of it.
So my talent, I actually said this to my niece. My niece is 14. And she was getting in trouble last year at school a whole bunch because she kept talking in school. And I told her, I said, Emery, listen, I got good grades, but my conduct was always average only because I was always talking. And that was like, I can't give her, it would be in the notes. Like I can't give her an E. She's not misbehaving, but we can't get her to stop talking.
Right.
And I told him, I was like, listen, I got in trouble so much in school for it. And now I get paid for it. Like now it's my job.
See, me too. This is good.
But I don't have any talents like some people can bake or cook.
It's
or
the gift
dance
of gab. It's a gift.
Of gab.
Gab, yes.
What is your
I love
talent?
it.
Like what's the one talent you have that no one would know?
Oh gosh. See, you're flipping it again on me. Oh my. I don't know that I have one either. I mean,
Gift of gab. We're the Gab sisters.
We're going to go with
the
that.
Gab girls.
We're the Gab girls. Well, we could keep on gabbing. This is fun, but we will let you go for now, and maybe I'll have you on another time. But again, if you're listening, go to BeckyKiser.com, and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you, friend.
God's blessings on it, and I know that it will just bless the socks off of anyone that reads it. So thank you again for being on Visibly Fit. God bless you.
Thank you.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that episode. Becky is absolutely adorable. Oh my goodness, that was so much fun. Hope you enjoyed the episode as well. Share it with your friends, your family, strangers, whomever, whomever that you think it would bless their socks off. So share it, give a rating and a review. Greatly appreciate that. And if you are interested in Becky's book, go to BeckyKiser.com. The book is But God Can: How to Stop Striving and Live Purposefully and Abundantly. And if you are looking for your next level of health and healing, you know, you can go to my website, wendiepett.com, or go to getvisiblyfit.com. And that's where you can sign up right away for my 7-week Visibly Fit Accelerator program. So I hope to see you there. This is your time, right? If you've even got like a little inkling of, yeah, you know what, I really like to get into that space of being healthy in mind, body, spirit, emotions. Don't delay. Just go. We've got an amazing community and an incredible program that can get you to where you deserve and desire to be in your health. So don't delay. Go there now. All right. Blessings. And we will catch you next time right here on Visibly Fit. All right. Take care. Well, that's a wrap for today's show. So thank you so much for tuning in. I love spending this time with you. To learn more and get more free resources, just head on over to wendiepett.com. And thank you in advance for sharing this episode and this podcast, following and subscribing, not only to this podcast, but finding me on social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are, I'm probably there too. Until next week and our next podcast time together, make it a visibly fit day.